Larry, it's great to have you. It's great to have you back on, and chit chatting. It has been a kind of incredible couple of weeks. First off, I think we're looking at this right now. We're kind of in the last final stretch. We got 3 weeks left into the end of the legislative session here in California. They still have approximately like 1,300 bills that they've got to go through in this last 3 weeks, which is, as you know, because I mean you've been involved in the state legislature. I mean for decades, and I mean it's a mad dash right now, isn't it?
Yeah. They wait. I always said that if they were students in school, it's like waiting till the night before your assignment is due to write your essay and turn it in, and that's what's happening. The sad part is a lot of these bills really do impact our lives, and we don't know the details until they're way past signed into law and they finally get someone to look at them. But that's where we're at.
Yeah, and it's changed a little bit, and you're right, because what happens is, so you got these 1,300 bills that go through a process and so forth, but you're going to have those that come in the last 72 hours of session, which sometimes some of these pieces of legislation are 200 pages long, some of them are 75 pages long of lawyer talk, and within they call it a gut and amend. They'll take another piece of legislation, strip out a big portion of the language, insert something else in there, and do they really have time to go through that piece of legislation, the details, that's impact that it's having when you've got everything else that's being put forth?
The truth is they don't want people to know all the details, because no matter what the bill is, no matter what side of the aisle you might sit on, if given enough time, the opposition will find something wrong and rally enough people against it to squash whatever good or bad is in a bill. So it's kind of by design they do this. And a couple of years ago, they struck up what they thought was a big win by saying, okay, a bill had to be in print 72 hours. We're talking about life-changing legislation. Needs more than 72 hours to be considered and read and digested, and exactly what it means and how it's going to be implemented. Oftentimes it's a guess.
Yeah, and you're right. And I'll just kind of give an example. About a year ago, I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago, there was a piece of legislation, Senate Bill 1137, that dealt with oil production in California. Now it creates a 3,200-foot setback, but what happened is that language got introduced 5 days before the end of session. When they hold committee hearings, it was just a quick. There was no experts on, okay, what's the economic impact? What's the impact to jobs? Are they going to retrain? Because you're dealing with 50,000 people who work in the oil industry. And they never answered the question because it never went through a full committee hearing of, okay, are there things as reverse setbacks? So if you can't have a home, a business, a school, a park, or a hospital within 3,200 feet of an oil well, because the proponent said, well, it's poisoning the area, it's making people sick. Well, does it work the other way around? If there's already an existing oil well, can you build housing there? And that's a question that is right now up in the air, and it's being asked by a couple of different cities and counties. It's like, okay, if you can't build an oil well where there's all these different homes or all these sensitive receptors, if there's already one there, well, does it work the other way around? And what's the impact? And it's interesting because now the city of Long Beach, because of this legislation, they are now having to deal with about a $300 million budget deficit because they're of the lost revenue. And part of the blame that is being cast is on the legislature waiting just 5 days before the end of session, no real analysis, and now they've got to deal with this. And we've had situations in the past where a lot of this stuff has happened, and people are beginning to see the details or raise questions after it already gone through. And by that time, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle.
Right. Then next year they'll come back with either cleanup legislation, or if they think they can get a 3,200-foot setback and that goes through, they'll try to bump it to 3,500 square feet. They're going to push it to see how far they can go, because when it comes to oil, for example, we both know their end goal is to end oil production in California, period.
Well, that one, and then there's the minimum wage that everyone seems. I mean, I just they want to. They're looking at what, $25 an hour now.
Right. Yet across the street is a coffee shop that is totally run by a robot.
Yes,
that's what's going to happen when we have those sorts of when we pay that sort of money. Look, I think everyone has a right to earn a livable wage, but they have to go find a job that pays that. And McDonald's was never meant to be a mortgage supporting job. But now we're creating it to be a mortgage supporting job. And it's why the prices of those sorts of foods are the way they are, and becoming more automated. I mean, we can watch commercials. To get these certain deals, you have to order it through the app. I suspect, and I'm almost certain, that's because it takes less manpower to do it that way, fewer jobs. So yeah, someone's making 20 or 25 bucks an hour in there, but far fewer than were making 12 or 13 before these laws went into effect.
Which has always got me wondering. It's like, what happens to a lot of these kids who get out of, they're in high school, because that's what the jobs were for a lot of these folks is, when you're in high school, when you're out of, when you're in summer break, you took these jobs so that you could, kind of get that entry level and train. And now if you're going to pay $20 an hour or pay $22 an hour, you're going to want someone who's got the experience, because you're paying a lot more.
Right.
So,
right. Again, and what do we pay then for real skilled positions? I mean, this is a trickle up effect. You start someone at McDonald's at $25 an hour. What does an electrician? What should they earn? What should a journeyman earn? What should an electrician in training earn? Should they earn $50 an hour to start? I mean, and that's what happens. It's causing everything else to go up, and every other service to charge more, because if you can get away with paying $25 or $20 an hour at a fast food restaurant, you've got to charge a lot more for a skilled profession.
You're right, and I talking to friends who end up running some of the items in the like warehouses or other industries. They're like, we're having to compete because we've got workers here at the warehouse are saying, why am I getting paid 18 or 19 bucks an hour when McDonald's is paying 20 bucks an hour? I should get paid, 22 or 23 bucks an hour. And so what happens to a lot of that is they'll have to end up raising their minimum wage that they're paying, but that means the cost of everything continues to go up. And so what happens is, once again, your paycheck gets outstripped. And this is kind of this never ending cycle, but a lot of it, Larry, as we started, a lot of it starts back in the legislature. It starts with these last 1,300 bills that are going through the legislature, where there's all these questions like you and I just brought up on this minimum wage, that or even on oil, that should be debated, should be explained, should the for and the against should be out there providing this information in these committees so that people can understand them and know what they're voting on. But as we deal with this last 3 weeks of legislative season, that's a lot of bills to go over, and a lot of the details get lost. And so what happens is we then have to deal with the consequences of that, what is an inefficient system, when they've had all year to go through this stuff. They've had the ability to deal with all these things, and they don't. So
right. I feel like these are the 3 most dangerous weeks for the American taxpayer.
Yeah, and you're right.
These 3 weeks, because our lives will be impacted more in these 3 weeks than any other time of the year, other than when the bills get implemented, when they're signed by the governor.
Yeah. Well, and talking about the governor, so this last couple of weeks, he's been on a tear. He's been out there holding press conferences. He was over in Southern California picking up trash. And I know you and I kind of joked around about it, but we both read the article at the same time. You called me up, and says, hey, have you seen that the governor's got this guy that he's got on the state payroll, paying him $200,000 a year as a professional. I guess the guy is like this professional photographer to take pictures for him, but yet he's out there blaming the cities and the counties for this for the problem of homelessness. What do you think all that's about?
I think it's about his legacy. He's got 2 more years left. So now it doesn't matter, and he can look tough where he hasn't looked tough on the issue of homelessness for 6 years. And now, since he doesn't have to worry about running for re-election in California, he can come off as looking like he is really trying to solve the homelessness issue. Hector, we talked about this in 2020. You and I personally went out and took pictures in some of these encampments in 2020. I'll guarantee you, we can go back to these same encampments and they're still there and they're still in the same condition. And simply to have some governor hire a famed photographer so he can take them down to an LA homeless encampment and throw around a mattress, and a tire, and look like he's helping solve the problem is kind of insulting to taxpayers. But that all goes to a but with me. But at least he's starting to address it. And as an average citizen, I just want to see fewer homeless on the street. That's really what I want to do. I want to drive from here. I live out in the suburbs of Sacramento, and we come down to Main Street. That's 12th Street. And right now in the morning, it's just lined with homeless tents. I want to drive down that street and see them gone, see it cleaned up. I looked it up before we started the meeting. We still have 171,000 homeless people in California. I mean, that's the same number. It's higher than when we started. Yeah. And we've spent $25 billion to address it. So how many more billions are we going to have to spend to really get it to the point where it's not an issue in everyone's lives? And let me say, look, personally, we have become so used to seeing homeless on the street that we'll see a human being laying unconscious. We don't know if they're dead or alive, and we all just walk by them. That's shame on us as humans, and shame on California for not really addressing this human crisis that we've had to deal with for now 4 years.
Yeah, it is an absolute shame, and you're right. We have invested all this money, and things are worse. The biggest problem that I have with it too is the investment of the money is like no one was keeping track of not just the programs themselves, but the outcomes of the program. So we spent all this money, yet the state can't tell you if what programs work, what programs didn't work, or to be able to tell you is like, okay, we saw some positive results with these 5 different programs. So let's focus more money on those programs versus these other 4 or 5 programs that failed and made the situation worse. And so it was $20 billion that was spent on homelessness, but we don't have anything to account for it. But yet, and it's just kind of it just seemed as though it was a payment plan it came from the state, went to the county, then went to these advocate groups, and then they were supposed to implement it. But as the money ended up trickling around, everyone got a cut somewhere. And eventually whatever money got into the streets to try to help out people, I mean, there's really no accounting for that. And it's a shame because the money could have been used for so many positive things, but it seems as though it was just kind of let's just throw money in there and see what happens.
It seems to me if we could have rewound the clock back to March, April 2020, and someone would have said, we're going to give you $25 billion to clean up this problem. Can you do it within a year? And I'm going to guess people would have said we would be able to put a pretty serious dent in the problem. Yet here we are 4 years later, and suddenly now the governor says, okay, now we're going to take it seriously. Conveniently comes 2 years before he's termed out of office, when he can look tough and not have to risk potential votes. And let me add, he can look tough if he ever runs for a national race like he took homelessness seriously. I
Yeah,
mean, he's
I
the
think you're
same
right.
guy. He's the same guy that was brave enough to defy um, the laws when gay marriage was set to be illegal, and he said, "No, we're going to allow it anyway." So we could have been addressing homelessness far sooner if he would have been brave enough to challenge the courts and just do it, clean it up, and we would have won because we did win. We the Supreme Court ruled we have a right to clean up homeless encampments. Period. End of story. It's not a pretty picture. You could put whatever word you want into it, and these are human beings, and I'm not thinking they're disposable, but we've done disservice to the homeless population by squandering $25 billion without helping them. They all should be housed in some sort of permanent overhead structure with $25 billion. It's not a top 10 item in Texas. Why? Because they addressed it, and they literally have them off the streets in tiny homes or other units that are available. So it's been one of my tangent items for a long time, and it's sad that it continues this way. And let's hope that the taxpayers get to see some results with his latest promotional pitch, using his professional photographer to photograph his legacy.
Well, I do like how you brought it together, and you're right. It's is he doing this for national ambition when he decides to run in 2 years, or should he believe that Kamala is going to end up winning? If he does decide to get some sort of position like one of those climate czars, that like John Kerry's position,
Right.
He's going to have to go through some type of confirmation. Where right now we've seen the former director of EDD, Julie Shu, who's been getting hammered right now every time she goes over to Congress for the failure on the unemployment debacle, where they were giving out unemployment checks over to even people who were sitting in prison, and so she's had a tough time even getting approval from that from Congress. And so, this is kind of one of those areas that is a weakness for him, and whether it's he's looking at, okay, where do I kind of cut off my weaknesses, not if I do a run or if I have to go through Congress to get confirmation. But the thing I really liked that you looked at is, no matter what that is, the fact that he's even talking about it and applying pressure or wanting or even saying he's doing something, that in itself is a benefit for us, even though there may be ulterior motives on his behalf, because he could have done this a while ago. And getting rid of those RVs, getting rid of these homeless encampments, cleaning back our streets, or just, I don't know. It's just, I walk down K Street here in Sacramento, and I mean, just the smell of urine at times when I've got to go to one of these offices that I go to, for meetings. And it's like, I talk to security guards, like, yeah, every morning we've got a spray wash out here, because they hang out here, and just the front door there, for a 4-story office building that holds, businesses, a union is in there. I mean, but it's just full of urine.
My doctor, who is in South Sacramento, had to change his office because he said when they'd leave, they would just overtake his doorway. And every day he'd come in, and there would be needles and excrement and anything else you can think of in front of the door. And his final straw was one homeless guy shot another one, literally shot them. And he said it was too risky for his patients, and he moved to a different location. I'm not talking, this is in the last 6 months. So I like that he's saying that we're going to withhold funding for communities that don't address solving homelessness or addressing it seriously. But I'm personally going to take a wait and see, because I just want I'm just going to let my eyes be the judge of how this looks, because that's really what this comes down to. Can you go down K Street without holding your nose? Can I come down 12th Street without seeing people just lined up in tents? Can we go to lunch together one time without walking past some guy living unconscious on the street and walk by and shake our heads and wonder and look at each other and say, is he okay? We need to get past that. And, so for me, it's a wait and see.
Yeah, and you're right. Eyes would be the judge on that. I mean, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of promises, and we're in a situation, several years later after $25 billion, and it's just a worse situation than it was before. So yeah, we'll just wait and see.